they get business, they get marketing, and they're able to really blend that together. I'm super excited to introduce Derek Weber.
Thanks, Jacob. All right, well, welcome. Thank you all for coming. We've got the slot right after lunch, which means we've got to amp it up at least 5 more notches. So expect it. So our goal today was to make sure all of you left with a little more knowledge, a little more awareness, and a little bit more insight on what you need to be doing, what you need to be helping your clients do, and all of the information and potentially the resources that are here to help you do that. So like Jacob said, my name is Derek Weber with Go Brand Go. We are a marketing company that works with $10 to $100 million B2B companies in the manufacturing industrial distribution space. Owners are in their 50s and 60s. They are looking to make some sort of leadership transition in the next decade or so. They often have a couple grandkids, they have a lake house, they ride motorcycles, all those sorts of things. So we partner with these companies to help them break out of the mold, to break free of the shackles of well, that's how we've always done it. Because typically these companies are in industries that are changing. And if they don't change, there's not going to be a business to transition. And so we help them use marketing to help them stay relevant in the sales chain, to transfer and translate from a sales-driven company to a sales and marketing-driven company, to make sure that they're telling their story in a way that's compelling, in a way that can create margin for them, instead of having their margin always be compressed by price being the only differentiation. Customer concentration issues, and internal alignment communication challenges that happen as the multi-generational workforce comes into play. And so at Go Brand Go, we have a word that we use a lot that's called empowergizing. So empowergizing means that every interaction with Go Brand Go should be empowergizing, meaning you should leave with a little more information and a little more energy. So we're firm believers that if you only get information, you only get knowledge, but you don't do anything with it, you might as well not have ever gotten it. On the other side, if you're not motivated, if you're all motivated and all hopped up, you're just on fire, but you don't have the right information, well, that's almost more dangerous. So what our goal is with this afternoon session is to take all this great information, all this great knowledge that you got from these amazing experts this morning, and kind of bring it all together. Because if you have all this information and you don't do anything with it, this was a waste of all of our time. Our goal with this session is to, once again, bring up the energy after lunch, but also show you how this information and knowledge can be applied. And not only applied in a way that is specific to your circumstance, but broad enough in this case study that you've all read. You've all done your homework, right? You were asked multiple times. You've all done your homework? Good. So making sure that this is a big enough and broad enough story that you can all relate to certain pieces and certain components. And what we want to really focus on is how can you take this information, there's going to be some quick hitting formats here, and figure out what do you need to be doing a little more digging into? What do you need to be thinking about a little bit more? Who do you need to go talk to make sure that you understand what you're up against? And so to accomplish these goals of bringing a little more energy after lunch, to make sure that you see the application, and to make sure you get a broad kind of tie it all together format, we're going to be doing, it's not even a mock debate, it's a real debate. Like, there's going to be a winner and a loser out of this. Now, I've told them the goal is not to win, the goal is to educate. But, you know, if you're not trying to win, what, you know. But, so what we're going to be doing is there are 6 broad topics that are going to be relevant to not only the Smith Industrial case study, but to all of us, to all of our businesses, to all the companies that we work with. And what the format is going to be, it's going to be quick hitting. That there's, if you see here, there's 6 cards taped to the podium. So there's 6 of them. And what's going to happen is there's an internal team and an external team. And they're going to try to educate you in a way, not convince you, but educate you in a way that makes you understand what the dynamics are and which way you think they should go. So the format's going to be, first person's going to come up, they're going to draw a card. They've got 3 minutes to talk about that topic, and they won't know what topic they have until they pull the card. So this is going to be fun. So they got 3 minutes to make this, make the debate. The other team then has 2 minutes to counter-argue that topic. Then that person will pull the next card, 3 minutes, 2 minutes. all the way through to the end. Make sense? All right, so to get this party started, I want to introduce team external and team internal. But before we do that, I want 3 skill sets to be practiced. These are going to be vital skill sets in the way that we can execute as a team together. All right, real simple. I want to see everybody raise their hand. Skill 1. Man, you guys are good. Oh, I saw somebody. There you go. I saw you. This is a skill. Raise your hand. Got it. Skill 2. Raise that hand again and high five somebody at your table. Now make sure you're not high-fiving everyone to the right, because then you're just going to start hitting people in the back of the head. Skill 3. Drum roll. On your table. And now introducing the external team. Coming from Anders CPA, Brent McClure. Brent is a CPA, CIPA, and certified value builder and leads Anders' business transition niche. Let's give it up for Brent McClure. You don't have to do the drum roll the whole time. You guys got the skill. But now, from internal team, coming from us, from Goldenberg, Heiler, and Antagonoli, we'll just call it GHA, Chad Brigham. Chad practices in the areas of business, real estate, and intellectual property transactions. Chad Brigham. Now from the external team, coming to us from Polsinelli Law Firm. Left me hanging.
Oh, sorry.
Paul Kluge. Paul is a shareholder in the St. Louis office of the Polsinelli Law Firm, which is the 3rd largest office of Polsinelli. It's a full-service national firm with over 825 attorneys and 23 offices in the U.S. Paul practices primarily in the corporate, do you see these skills? While no looks. Corporate and transactional practice group, working with privately held companies and their owners on succession planning and exit transactions. Now the counter argument from the internal team, from Affinity Law Group, Kathleen Bilderback. Kathleen is a founding member of Affinity Law Group, focusing on estate planning, family business succession, and executive benefits, and is barely out of the hospital to be here with us today. And our final external team member, Mr. Alan Hoggy. Alan is in his 24th year as a group chairman of Vistage Worldwide, who works with CEOs and owners of small to medium-sized companies. Vistage Worldwide serves over 23,000 CEOs and business owners across 19 countries around the world and 200 in St. Louis. Alan! And wrapping it up, Mr. Mike Listner. Mike comes from Acropolis Investment Management, and he is a certified exit planning advisor. And he helps business owners prepare for their eventual transition of their business. That's right. Nice. Well done, sir. All right, now let's see if I can. All right. So as you guys did all your homework and read the case study, we'll go through it really quickly. So Smith Industrial is, when I read this case study, it sounded like a lot of our clients. It's a multi-generational family company that, $15 million, about 5 to 10% in EBITDA across the years. Family dynamics may be complicated, may not be, depending on how it goes. A couple kids, wife, all those sorts of fun things. Key staff. Tim Smith, the owner, founder, also Rainmaker. He's got some great operational help with Mike Crandall, that's been with the company for a long, long time. And his other financial and HR key person, relatively new to the organization, 5 years. Industry is flat, not the best, not the worst. It's doing okay. They're a very respectable 5th largest company in the industry. But they are also about 5 times smaller than the largest competitor. So there's a lot of room for opportunities there. Tim's plugged into the industry through the associations and other trade magazines, etc. Overall financials, they've done a great job at building repeat customers. So obviously what they do, they're good at doing because their customers keep coming back and that recurring revenue is there. Balance sheet, there's some debt on the books, nothing extraordinarily huge, but there's some stuff there. And as you see, income statement, a little up and down, margins a little inconsistent. So there's obviously some things there. Tim thinks the company's worth $6 million. We'll see what our expert panelists believe. Personal financials, Tim and his wife they've got their burn rate that they know that they need to hit, so they need to make sure that those liquid assets are going to take them on and through their retirement, and need to make sure that that is there. They've not met with psychological associates, obviously, because the succession plan is just verbally husband to wife. So they need to call psychological associates, obviously. All right, let's let the debate begin. All right, so before we get into that, we talked earlier, there's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser. We're going to practice these skill sets once again. Based on reading the case study, who thinks that it should be an internal transition? Remember, we practiced this skill. Raise your hand if you think it should be an internal transition. Yeah, I would hope the internal transition team. Who thinks it should be an external transition team? You guys got your work cut out for you. So right now it looked like it was about 95-5 towards external. So let's see how the teams can do in making that continue to change. Now, that being said, I don't want you to have the cognitive bias of confirmation bias of now all of you folks that voted external or all you folks that voted internal to be just listening to confirm what you've already voted. So now wipe your ballot clean and listen to what you think is going to be the best. All right, who's got a coin? Anybody got a quarter? I know. All right, so we'll use this notebook. Bears, internal team, blank, external team gets to go first. Blank it is. All right, so who is our first candidate from your team?
I'll go.
All right, so Alan. All right, now here's our second skill set that we get to use again. Drum roll as Alan comes up and removes his topic on which he will have 3 minutes to debate. Survey says?
Business and industry structure.
You have the mic, and you have 3 minutes.
So I've got some real concerns about the industry structure that he's in. He's got some very large competitors, and he doesn't have a lot of competitive advantage that I can see. His sales are down, his income's down, and if you look at the places where he does have some strength, he is evidently in 2 niches where his competitors aren't. I think they're going to be there very soon, and they got a lot of scale on it. So I don't think the industry dynamics are good. The industry's not growing. It's pretty flat. It doesn't make a good case right now for what he needs to do in terms of keeping the business, but he's got external challenges too, because if he's going to sell it, he's got to grow it.
Boom! Internal team. What do you have to say about that? 2 minutes.
That's it? That's really it?
How much more time do I get?
Well, I mean, it's a C corporation.
Yeah.
So what did I talk about for half the morning with the C corporation that might be a good fit here from an internal transition perspective? ESOP. And why is it a good candidate for an ESOP? It's a C corporation, which means that the owner can sell. It's an automatic market for the business. They can diversify tax-free. Certainly, if you look at the financials, they've not spent too much time saving money for retirement. So that ability to diversify tax-free gives them the opportunity to have additional retirement income. What else? What else do we want to say?
Mic dropped. All right, Kathleen.
Can we review it a little bit on that?
You may not. Kathleen, let's pick our next topic. Drum roll. I appreciate you asking nicely, though. Survey says?
Survey says retention of employees, culture, and legacy.
You have 3 minutes.
Well, I think that employees, culture, and legacy here strongly favors an internal transition. And here's why. If you look at the facts of the case, there's very low turnover here. For example, the person who is in charge, the Lean 6 green belt, I'm not looking at the facts, has been with the company for, 30-something years? I mean, that's a significant period of time. Now, I will say that there are some opportunities here also in the facts to improve the protection of the employees. There are some real gaps here. Obviously, we have a situation where Tim wants to continue his legacy. He's expressed that on several occasions. An internal transition will permit that more favorably than an external transition. We have opportunities to transition to family, which would result in no major changes to the culture. Transitioning to a management buyout would result in no major changes to the culture. And an ESOP would result in no major changes to the culture. So the legacy and the culture that are important to Tim would be preserved. So I would say that to the extent that Tim favors strong relationships with the employees, the existing culture, and his legacy, an internal transition is preferable.
Brent, what do you got to say about that?
Thank you. Show of hands out there. How much is legacy worth? Is it worth a lot? Is it worth a lot? You got a company that's been in business for 100 years. How much is it worth? Drew, we learned this at EPI. What's it worth? 0, exactly. Legacy is not worth anything. The other thing, too, on employee retention is who's the #1 salesperson? Tim. So you gonna lock him up for a couple more years? He wants out of the business, right? So I don't think an internal transition will work without getting some other folks in there. I think an external transition works well with this, basically because you're going to have to bring in a new sales force. Any other thoughts?
Just quickly reverting back to the ESOP question. I know we're not supposed to go back, but we are anyway. It's part of being a lawyer, you get to set the own rules. But so because most of the employees are union, and so with respect to an ESOP, I don't think it's going to work. There's too many union employees. I don't think an ESOP is going to do it here. So
I disagree with that, Paul, because we don't know.
Yep, you'll have your turn. All right, Brent, pick your next topic. Drum roll, please.
Risk-reward ratio.
You've got 3 minutes.
3 minutes. I think the definition of this risk-reward ratio is there anything that we can do now to reduce the risk of any sort of transaction, any sort of reward that I can pick up now, or push it down the road. So the risk-reward ratio means is there something I can do right now? The big thing might be to do some sort of partial external transition. In other words, a partial PE buyout, private equity buyout, something like that. Still leave some chips on the table and allow this company to grow. The other part of risk-reward ratio we always think about too. Is there anything we can do to de-risk the company? Is there any sort of key man life insurance policies we can put into place? Any sort of procedures and practices we can put into place? This will both benefit kind of the internal and external risk-reward ratio on this.
Just to add to that, when you have an industry that isn't growing, as this one isn't, there's a great opportunity here to sell this to the competitors, have an auction, let them fight over the market share.
Boom. If he could drop the mic, he would have just done it right there.
One more quick thing as we participate. I think if everyone could just say maximize value and minimize risk. So if I sell to a third party, what am I doing? I'm definitely maximizing value because I'm going to get hopefully a bidding war going for my. Hopefully I can get a bidding war going for my company. And how do I minimize risk? I sell it. I get out from underneath the risk.
All right, Chad, show him what's up.
I think you have a challenge thinking that this that there'd be a big reward in this business right now with the trending, with the fact that there's no real heir apparent in terms of the CEO or the sales structure. You're in a niche market that doesn't look like any competitors are really interested in jumping into it right now. You had a company that was on an acquisition spree and they never sniffed around this company. So I think at the risk of being able to sell externally right now and squeeze out a big multiple is going to be problematic. When I think about the reward, this isn't scientific or anything, but you know, what would be more rewarding than being able to have a real dialogue with your family about passing this down to children who, like I said, I've seen very little dialogue at this point at whether or not kids are interested in this or not. But kick that can down the road. Allow that to happen as you develop. If you develop this, as you find an heir apparent for some of these gaps that you have. So at the end of the day, I think the reward here, as he has 4 more years of trying to accomplish some sort of a legitimate transition plan to finding a way to do that with his family or his senior management, if they're interested, would probably be very beneficial.
All right, Chad. Drum roll. Chad, pick a card. And our next topic is
Financial goals. The lawyer talking about finances. All right. I didn't see a lot of financial goals on here. I mean, he's got I saw one tangible financial goal, and that's he thinks he can flip this for $6 million right now. Or at least maybe he's backing in his financial goal because it doesn't seem that he has a goal of saving. It seems like Tim's one big goal has been spending so far. So if his financial goal is a big liquidity event, in order to sustain that lifestyle, then I don't think an external sale is going to do the trick for him. I just don't think he's going to be able to get that big of a pop. Where else would I go on an internal? I guess I would have to take it back to just if you're not going to be able to squeeze out that big multiple on a sale, then trying to build up your management team, trying to build up your sales team, trying to put processes in place, trying to diversify some of your customers are going to get you into that position at a time later down the road because he's just not ready for that sale right now. And like I said, I'll go back to having the dialogue. In that amount of time, you can also determine whether or not the external sale is something that they're going to have the stomach for.
All right, we've got a lawyer off. Let's see it, Paul.
Sure. Well, again, based on value, you know, where are your dollars better spent? Are your dollars better spent? He's 62 years old. Does he really have time to plow financial resources back into the business, get people up to speed, build a management group? I mean, maybe he should have been doing this 10 years ago, but he's not 52, he's 62. So what's he going to do? I think financial resources would be better spent, getting his business ready for sale, updating his financials, possibly tweaking a few things internally. But I also think it's a huge financial risk to have 3 kids, any one of which, one's involved in the business, the other 2 aren't, and to put all my eggs in that basket. Not that I don't love my kids, but to rely on one of them for my retirement, at least at this stage in the game, I just don't see it. I don't see that. I wouldn't make my financial goal doing that. I'd rather maximize value, be able to leave. If I'm going to leave a legacy for my kids, I think it would be financial after selling the business as opposed to the business itself.
Great. All right, drum roll, Paul. Pull your next one.
So I have leadership and management capabilities. And I did touch on that a little bit. So again, there are no leadership or management capabilities in this company. And how do you get them? And how do you get them, when you need them? And I say there are none absent the owner. And so again, I think one competitor might be interested. These competitors can come in, easily leverage a buyer's sales force, easily leverage a buyer's management group. I'm not sure there's, according to the facts, there's not a whole lot of key people to keep around. So in that regard, I think selling to a third party, you can leverage the resources of the buyer. Private equity might work, although I think private equity oftentimes looks for a current strong management group. I'm not sure we have that. So I think if you're going to think about a private equity group, might have to shore up some of the management skills and leadership. But I don't see according to the facts, I don't see a whole lot of management or leadership in the three kids. I just don't see it. I think it's going to take a lot of money and effort to get them up to speed. One suggestion might be to bring in an outside third party to sort of bridge the gap between genders. So, you have a 60-year-old, you got the kids are a little bit young. That might be a successful way to build value. I don't want to sell it for my opponents here, but that might be one way to maybe bridge the gap. But I think at this point, to me, that would just be, again, I'm trying to minimize risk and maximize value, and to me, that would just be a little bit too risky at this point.
Mr. Listener, 2 minutes.
Thank you. Well, my heart goes out to Tim and his family, because the disappointing side for internal or external is right now this business is not even sellable. You've got no management team, and sales are completely dependent, 60% on the owner. Nobody's going to buy this company. Someone's talking about getting top dollar. Excuse my grammar, it ain't going to happen. It's sad. The good news is he's 62. He wants to retire in 4 years. He can still get this company sellable, either internal or external, but it's not happening this year or the next couple of years. He has a lot of work to do. The question is, does he have what it takes in himself to put forth the effort for the next couple of years? In terms of leadership, I think we've all hit on it, but the president, sales and marketing, desperately need leadership. Operations, the guy that he has probably is not the right guy. And then finance looks like that probably is okay. So from most of the leadership team is not up to the current task. In terms of just internal or external, in this case, I think that just the leadership and management favors considering an internal, because he has a couple years to work with his family, which he's not communicated with, to see if his family is genuinely interested in working in the business, using psychological associates to test the family members to see what their capabilities are, and if it's consistent with the needs of the company. And if not, to go out and bring in outside talent. I think you're absolutely right, Paul. They need to bring in outside talent, but you're not going to sell it until you've gone through that process.
Boom. Last topic.
Lifestyle and family dynamics. Well, I'm not the lawyer, but I can tell you, I think all the lawyers up here will say this is a huge need for estate planning here, and that's one of the first things that they're going to have to address. Outside of the estate planning, there is significant financial concerns. I look at the numbers, and I think he almost has no choice in the end, probably, but to do an internal transition with the numbers we've been presented. The concerns are pretty dramatic. He says they've done some preliminary financial planning and think they can live on $180,000 a year. Look at their net income for the past few years. It's been $750,000 or more, and the add backs from the company alone are about probably 120 to 180. So just in add backs, he's already taking out what he says he needs to live on. What's happening with the $750,000? Where's that money been going? They can't live on 180,000. Something doesn't add up here. They have savings of 1.2 million, and yet they've been pulling out $750,000 for the past how many years? Their lifestyle is not a $180,000 lifestyle. Their lifestyle is probably a $500,000 lifestyle. So They are going to have to get top dollar, after tax top dollar, unless they do a phenomenal job and can get a really above fair market value. Fair market value is going to favor an ESOP because of the tax savings. So unless they can get 30% over fair market value, financially they're better off with an ESOP. How much time do I got? I can go on. So from a pure lifestyle, they also have the family dynamic perspectives. And right now, they don't know if they want their kids in the business or not. But if that is something that the kids seem to have some interest in, clearly, if the kids want to be in the business and it works financially to the advantageous to the parents, then that's a win-win. So from a family dynamics perspective, I think it's clear-cut that an ESOP or a internal transition of some sort is what is called for. Thank you, and we look forward to helping Smith Industrials.
Mike, can I add something on the estate planning side?
Oh, I'd love that.
So Mike just kind of mentioned estate planning, but I just want to dive in a little bit deeper in depth. Based on the facts, how many of you think that Tim even has a will?
Uh-oh. Alan, bring it home.
I really think this guy's sitting on a pile of dynamite. He is responsible for, directly or indirectly, 90% of the sales. And if he were to die or to become disabled, that, the top line could go away in just a hell of a hurry. I think that what he needs to do is to get an auction going, sell his company, agree to stay as CEO for a limited period of time, and then have an earn out in addition if he needs to. But all this, this thing could go from being a company to just being a pile of assets in almost overnight.
Awesome. Thanks, Alan. All right, closing arguments. You each get 3 minutes to close. Internal team, 3 minutes. Closing arguments.
Nobody wants to do it.
I like walking around. So we looked at 6 factors today. From a retention of employees, culture, and legacy, this clearly favors an internal transaction. My friends across the aisle that said legacy is worth nothing, you're right, it is worth nothing to me, and it's worth nothing to Brent. It doesn't matter what I think it's worth. Tim says it's worth something to Tim, so it has value. It doesn't matter what I think, it's what the client thinks. He says that the legacy has value. I'm going to listen to him, and I'm going to give him the value he thinks it has, not the value I think it should have or shouldn't have. Culture. There is no question. On an internal transaction, you keep the culture. On an external transaction, you completely lose control, and the culture always gets destroyed. Legacy, employees, culture, all favor an internal transaction. Management and leadership, I think, are mildly favor an internal, but is not much past a push. The business and structure, the third one we talked about, again, mildly favors an internal, but not a huge difference. The family lifestyle and dynamics strongly favor an internal transaction. From a purely financial planning perspective and being able to fund their retirement, the internal transaction provides them the best opportunities to do that. The estate planning side, you can do a lot of creative estate planning now with an internal transition that you don't have available on an external transition. So that is a benefit. So on the lifestyle and family dynamic parts with regards to getting the kids involved if they want to be, again, it only has the option of an internal transition. There is no support for that on the external transition. And the last one being the risk-reward ratio. You have a greater opportunity to diversify your risk today with an ESOP, where you have no ability, because this company is not currently sellable, to transition this externally. So you're going to have to wait a few years, but you can start to diversify your business risk, your concentrated risk today with an internal transition that you cannot do on the external. So on the merits of this particular case, it is pretty black and white. This should be an internal transition.
Boom. Alan.
Obviously, we disagree.
It's okay, you could be wrong.
It wouldn't be the first time. So I think to us, one of the biggest concerns is that if it's an internal transition, there's really no payday for Tim in the short term. Not like there would be with a sale, even if it's not for a heck of a lot of money. As far as management transition, he has 3 children, 2 of whom haven't really expressed an interest. One is in the business, but seems to be spending his time on the factory floor. Our question to Tim would be, if Chris, who is an auditor at a CPA firm, wasn't his son, would he be inviting him to be CEO? And on top of that, he's already told his wife if something happens to him to sell the business. So if Chris comes in and he's CEO and something happens to Tim, he dies, wife sells the business, where does that leave Chris? It's not a good situation. We talked about the marketing side, and that there's an opportunity here for Tim to take advantage of the fact that this industry is not growing and to get his competitors to fight over him. Another concern is that he says his energy level is not what it used to be. He's 62. If he has to get back in the game, how well is he going to play it? Over 75% of his workers are unionized. Tim's got a great relationship with the workforce. I wonder what sort of field day the business agent might have with young Chris if he had to negotiate the next union contract. We talked about instructions being only verbal. We even wonder if there's a will. To Kathleen's point, it's a good one. Wonder what happened if this estate went through intestacy. Kind of a scary thought. It needs to be sold now. As far as getting out is concerned, his sales are down by $2 million. His revenue's down by $730,000. Okay, he thinks that's worth $6 million. There's no way to get to $6 million from those kinds of numbers. He should get what he can now, stay in maybe with the promise of part of an earnout as well. And he should also tell Susan that if he hasn't sold, that she should be arranging an auction with a good investment banker. Another question we had is, if he and his wife's relationship were to end in divorce, how much protection does the building lease with her as building owner offer? Again, another good reason to get all these assets out now. Anything to add, gentlemen?
All right. Thanks, Alan. All right. So these are 6 fantastic debaters on 2 teams, but there'll only be 1 winner. So when we first voted, it was about 95-5. So in order for the internal team to win, they had to sway a big portion of the room. Now remember, delete your memory of whatever your vote was before and base it off what you just heard from these 6 wonderful experts. Based on this information, on both sides of the aisle, who thinks it should be an internal transaction? Oof. Oof. Who thinks it should be an external transaction? I will have to say the internal team did a fantastic job in moving a lot of votes over, but the external still has it. Now I want to pose a couple questions. Who's somebody whose vote was different at the end than it was at the beginning? Who's somebody that? Why did you change your vote?
Mine's actually it's the third vote. I think they demonstrated that there's not enough information on this sheet to actually make a decision.
For sure.
So I said external, but now I'm right down the middle. I need more information.
That's a good point. So I was talking with Brent beforehand. He said he was on a panel recently that had a case study. Now, it wasn't as cool of a debate format as this was, but he was on a panel, boring, normal, old panel. And they had a 50-page case study. This was 1 page front and back. Point being, there's a lot of variables to go into this. Point being, it takes 10 years to get through it all. Point being, all you business owners out there need to be having these conversations for a long time before you're about to have that transaction happen. Who's somebody who didn't change their vote? Why?
Well, I think that the competition they have a repeat customer base, and the competition hasn't been able to penetrate their market. This gives them an easy way to come in and penetrate the market, but just buying up someone and probably do it for a pretty good value because the net income's not there. So.
Did you guys hear his answer? So in the marketplace, the way it is, it's a flat industry, so really the only way to get growth is by taking it from someone else. So obviously, I'm guessing you were an external? So his vote was external because in the industry, the way that the industry is structured, the only way for the four that are ahead of this company is by buying it. So to Alan's point that he made a couple times, try to get a bidding war for his company. All right, so now I want to open up to a little Q&A. So we've got about 15 minutes for you guys to really start digging into some of these topics that obviously, like we talked about before, this was wide, broad strokes over the course of a lot of different topics. This is your opportunity to ask very specific questions about very specific topics. But I hope that you were able to take away, once again, a lot of new information, a lot of maybe ways that you hadn't thought about it before, because there's a lot of stuff here. So these are 6 great experts, so use this time wisely and asking questions that are relevant to you, or maybe your friend that has this problem. But use this time wisely. So who's got a question for some of our 6 experts? I'm not afraid of long, awkward pauses. Let me get the microphone real quick.
I actually have a question about the case study. If you weren't assigned to internal, external, what would you have voted on the stage?
Ooh, good question. Thanks, Jacob. All right, let's. Who would have been internal? That's just quick hands, and then we'll explain why. Who would have been internal? Who would have been external? Who would have asked for more information?
When I first read it, I was external. The second time I read it, I moved to internal because it's the only way they can meet the, because it's not sellable.
Yeah.
The idea that you could sell it, I like the external, and financially they can't make it work, so you don't have a choice.
Brent?
This company needs a lot of work to get to either internal or external. Mike, I think you'll agree with me. So it's not one of these cases where, hey, we're going to turn it around to the family here. We're going to turn around the family here next week, next year, whatever. It needs a lot of work done. There were 2 big points that came out, and Kathleen touched on one of them when I first read through this. Is one, what's the company actually worth? Nobody knows. He throws out a ballpark figure there of $6 million. Well, how does he know that? Is it a buddy down the street sold his business and something like that? The other thing is the will and trust. You know, is there a will out there? What's his thoughts if something happens to him?
Well, it's kind of funny actually, because if he doesn't have a will, you know, he's told her, sell the business if I die. If she dies, he's got a child from a first marriage, and if that goes through intestacy, she doesn't own the company. She only owns part of the company. So unless he's got estate planning documents, she can't even carry out that part of his wishes. Yeah. So, and basically we end up in court.
Lawyers.
For the internal team, knowing what you know now, what would you advise Tim that in an ESOP he should get for his business? What would be the amount?
And the answer cannot be there's not enough information.
Well, I mean, I think was the question, what dollar figure can he get? We have to have a valuation. It has to be a fair market value. That's, you know, code and regulations, which I greatly love. So we don't know. And I want to go back to Paul's point.
She needed more information.
Because I never got to speak to Paul's point about the union issue. Okay, Paul, bring it. We don't know actually what the payroll is for the non-union employees. So it's true that, as I said this morning, collectively bargained employees are generally excluded from the ESOP. However, we don't know what the payroll is for the non-union employees.
Yeah, two quick comments. One, I think on an ESOP, when companies go ESOP, I think the thing about culture is big. And when you have a lot of union employees, I don't know what that culture is like. And so if you're going to go ESOP, everybody has to be thinking the same because all the employees become owners. And it does add a lot of cost to operating the business. You have internal trustee, but if you try to do something externally, you have to get independent trustees and all kinds of crazy things. So I'm not saying this isn't maybe worth going down. I think this guy, he should probably look at all his options and try to figure out the best one. But the ESOP, I just don't know if the mentality's there from a culture standpoint. And then also with the revenue and the cash flow, on an ESOP, you're going to have to service debt. And so you're going to have to put a whole other layer of debt service there. And given the flatness of revenue and earnings, I don't know if it would be that good a deal. And plus, they still have to do evaluation, and he's only going to get what it's worth today, not necessarily what you might be able to get in a bidding war.
I agree with that too.
Next question. Oh, in the back.
You said it's not solvable the way it is. What are the key things that you do? A lot of small businesses are relying on that one or two people that are making things go. What's the general game plan for getting out of that box?
Did you guys hear that over here?
So the question was, why do we think the business is not sellable today? When look at it from the buyer's perspective. When you buy a company, what you're buying is the future revenue stream after I take out the risk of that revenue stream. So it's the risk-free, my perceived, generally risk-free future revenue stream. As many people have pointed out, if Tim's not there, you lose anywhere from 60 to 90% of the top line revenue. There is no profitability left. I'm buying the future profit stream from this company, and there's none left without the owner. That's why that's the first reason why this company is not currently sellable. You got no management team, no outside sales organization. It's got lots of other problems, but that's, in my opinion, you can solve that in a couple years. 2 to 3 years from now, this company's sellable.
Can I respond to that? This company is a horse that only Tim can ride right now. Okay? His opportunity is to go to the players that would like to get into the markets where he has a temporary competitive advantage, and all competitive advantage are temporary, and say, hey, look at all this additional revenue you can get. I'll stay, help you transition my accounts to your sales team, and we'll make it happen. Is it a great answer? Maybe not. But a lot of times there isn't a good answer. There's only a best one. And the real issue he has here is if something happens to him today, he's got nothing.
One missing fact I would maybe ask for next time would be there's a lot of information about the sales being tied to Tim, but it doesn't say how diverse the customer base is. So to the extent they're in two unique industries that their competitors have not been able to penetrate, and if to the extent that the customer base is diversified, so no one customer makes up more than 5 or 10% of the business, and it's sort of spread out, I think those are all great factors that could bode well for him to at least work from that to try to position this to sell.
So I want us to practice again one of our 3 skill sets. Where are my business owners? Raise the hands. All right, one of you. What is something that is similar in your business to Tim's business? And what question do you have on that specific dynamic? So those hands went down quickly when I had
a question that roughly correlates to
Perfect.
I believe there was an inherent bias in the... I believe there might have been an inherent bias in the case study by saying they're number 5 in the market share. Look at 1, 2, 3, and 4. At no point was it ever, what does 6, 7, 8 look like? And do they have aspirations, infrastructure, cash, things that they could come up and take care of Tim and his family in a reasonably short amount of time? I think we just ignored them completely. And so for the whole team, but more for the external team, how are you aware of all the options, even when you often look up, not down?
Great.
It's called due diligence.
Yeah. Another question. Over here. Oh, you got one there. Okay.
So,
And then Jacob, right.
say Tim comes to a group of advisors 3 years previous to this. What is the game plan so that you're not facing the situation we're currently in right now? What practically would you advise him to start doing right now so that he's ready to sell at this point?
Great question.
I think, like we said, the first thing is hey, let's find out what the value of this business is. Let's see where we start from day one. Is it worth $6 million? Is it worth $2 million? And then you kind of want to have them sit down and go through some personal financial planning. Say, okay, how much do you need to live off of? What exactly is this $15,000 a month buying you? Is it exotic trips? What is it? Are you going to want to maintain that lifestyle? Kind of the third thing we might help them out with too is some de-risking activities. And what can we do to de-risk this industry? And anybody else want to add a couple more things?
Yeah, he hasn't done, if you look at the case study, he hasn't done any real marketing in 5 years. So,
He obviously did
Go
not
Brand
hire
Go.
Go Brand
Yeah,
Go. 10%?
Yeah, he hasn't done any marketing in 5 years. If I were an advisor coming in 3 years earlier, I would say, let's get a business plan for this business, and let's bring in some seasoned management to help you shore things up, make the company less dependent on you, because it's completely dependent now. And then let's talk about, are we going to bring one of your kids in, and what's the plan to get them ready? So really having a plan looking to address all the weaknesses while we have the time to do it.
And I'm going to expand on that question. And so besides lawyer, wealth manager, accountant, Vistage group leader, who are the people that Tim should have been talking to 3 years ago? I mean, obviously, all 6 of you. But besides all the 6 of you, what's the team that he needs to be compiling 3 years ago?
Internal team, you mean?
Of advisors and the folks that he should be talking to.
Okay. I would have him get out and talk to other people who've already done this, other CEOs and business owners. I mean, that's a little self-serving. I understand
And business owners, raise your hands again.
Yeah.
Look around the room.
Yeah, and find people who not only succeeded, but people who are now working as Walmart greeters or something like that because they didn't do it. So I would certainly recommend that.
Who else?
I think also he needs to really involve his family. I mean, what if his son does have an interest in coming and running the business? Great, I got 3 to 4 years to work with him to bring him up to speed.
Or to find out that he doesn't.
Yeah.
Great. Deborah?
Yeah, so can you talk a little bit about the risk of what happens if he stays where he is? Because he runs a huge risk you're not talking about that company value keep declining in this type of market he's in. And there's so many owners that hold on to their company too long before they sell or make a transition. So can you address that? I think this case study talks to it well.
Who are you asking?
Anyone of you.
There was a novel, I think it was Hemingway, talks about the 2 guys that are going broke. And the one guy says to the other, how'd you go broke? And the guy who went broke says gradually and then suddenly. And this happened to my father in his business. He had a retail lawn and garden center. And he saw the big boxes kind of circling around him. He's in his late 70s and he loves the business and all that. And in the winter, he'd always have to put money into the business. He'd get it back out in the spring. One spring, he didn't get it back out. Okay, so this can really go bad. I mean, you can't know if you sold too soon. You'll always know if you sold too late.
Right.
What else? It's a unique opportunity to ask a lot of really smart people very specific questions.
I'll ask a question. How realistic is this case study?
Far too realistic. So, you look at the statistics that they put out at the start of this, that 70% of businesses don't sell. The reality is a lot of people are running what's called a lifestyle business, which means it works for your lifestyle while you're working there, but you haven't put the pieces in place, and it takes a few years to put the pieces in place. You haven't put the pieces in place to make it attractive to anybody else because you're too critical to the business. So it's very common, and it's 70%.
Is there a benchmark?
Yeah, you're on.
Is there a benchmark percentage for your debt service before you would consider an external sale per se? In other words, the lower, the better, at least this much debt service taken care of.
How does debt service affect the decision to go internal, external? How about that?
Well, if you felt that, if you had a point of view at the future that the business wasn't going to do any better or might go worse, then you might want to find a greater fool and duck a bullet and get what you could for it. I don't mean to be flippant, but there's I've been involved in businesses that had a lot of. I'm sorry. I've worked with businesses that had a lot of debt, and it was okay because they were growing like crazy. And I've seen businesses that had a lot of debt, and they were going this way.
Your answer would be no.
I'm sorry?
Your answer to my question would be no. There's no magic percentage or benchmark for debt service as it relates to when you make a decision to sell.
I don't think so.
Thank you.
Another way to look at that might be, though, that when you sell your business, especially in the private equity world, if they say it's sort of a debt-free, cash-free deal, then any debt other than payables, you're responsible for. So when you look at your purchase price that you might be getting, your purchase price is X, but you're going to be using some of those dollars to pay off your debt. So to the extent that you keep leveraging and leveraging and leveraging, as long as you're getting a good return on that internally, that's great. But when you go to sell, a buyer just doesn't assume that debt and say, hey, we're really glad we assumed this and we're still going to pay you top dollar. So I think that's going to be a purchase price consideration. So in your mind, if you have a lot of debt on the books, be prepared that debt's going to have to be paid out of the proceeds of the sale for any smart buyer.
All right, so last question. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of, that flow chart that was up earlier. A lot of these things can be very overwhelming. What's the one thing, leaving this day today, what's the first thing, if someone's not started, what's the first thing, what's the one thing that they should do to get started?
Have a plan. Bring in good outsiders. Get a plan together and get someone who will tell you the truth, even if it's harsh.
I think setting goals, figure out what your goals are early and then try to attain them. And then use your experts, use your advisors, anyone you can put your hands on to figure out how to get you from point A to point B. But if your goal is just to continue to run your business as an ATM machine and never really maximize the value on an exit, whether it's with your family or outside, if that's your goal, then fine. But realize it.
I think the one thing is we get comments from clients all the time saying, I'm not ready to think about this. I'm not ready to think about transitioning my business, exit, succession planning, whatever. But the thing that always sticks in my mind is and it was up on one of the slides this morning, was the 5 Ds: the death, disability, divorce, disagreement, and dismemberment. Come on, laugh. So we get clients often that think about that don't think about those 5 Ds, and so that's one takeaway I hope everybody thinks about is things can happen.
I think the first thing to do is, if you're here today, you were invited by somebody, that somebody has an understanding of the value, process, the exit planning as a whole. Just pick up the phone and call them, and they can help you get started.
Now I have 2 microphones. I agree with the plan. And one of the best places to start is with your estate plan, because I also have a lot of clients who say, I'm not ready to work on the succession plan for my business. And my question is always, what happens if you don't show up tomorrow?
We've all said plan, so I'm not gonna say the same. I would start with just dialogue, getting all your advisors together and creating a dialogue. No one wants to start, or you don't tend to want to start this, particularly when you're working as hard as Tim is, when you're the CEO and you're the salesperson. You're putting out fires, you're taking care of the business, and you're handling it. You just need to step back and create a dialogue of what your transition plan is, who's going to be part of that. I've never seen any problem not be able to be solved without a little bit of dialogue. So.
Fantastic. All right, I hope this was educational. Hope it was informational. I hope it was fun and energizing. I hope it was an empowerizing experience. Like Mike said earlier, you were here because you were invited. And the people that are in this room, whether it's the sponsors or the attendees, this was a selected group of people who are all good people. So these are the folks that you should be talking with. These are the folks that you should be getting references from. These are the folks that you should be picking their brains, whether it's here or outside of this room. Take advantage of this opportunity, because this does not happen that often. take advantage of this. Ask questions, get business cards, schedule follow-up coffee meetings. Because if you don't do anything after today, this was a colossal waste of all of our time, all of our energy, and all of our effort. Our goal here was to make all of you better business owners, better advisors, and be better prepared for what it takes to not have what Tim's about to go through, which is not pretty. So I hope this was a great empowerizing experience, and you're in for a real treat with our next keynote. So let's give it up one more time for our 6 debaters. Thank you all.